Be What You Don't See campaign, and this is the September edition of 2025. And our esteemed guest today is Brita Fortis. And Brita, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm a massive fan of yours. I could fangirl for a long time about all the flies that you tie and the beautiful things that you put up on the internet, and also all the flies I've used of yours that are amazing and deadly. I'm going to let you talk a little bit about you. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and sort of what drew you into fly fishing?
My family had a cabin growing up on the Still-Squamish on the South Fork. My grandfather was heavily into fishing and fly fishing. My dad did both gear fishing and fly fishing. I have an older sister, and she kind of dabbled in it a little bit, but I was kind of the one who was really gung-ho about it. And I essentially, with help from both my dad and my grandfather, taught myself how to fly fish when I was around 8-ish. And then I taught myself how to tie around 10. And there's nobody else in my family had ever done that. So I kind of wanted to try something that everyone else hadn't done. And I remember getting the Kaufman's catalog and circling the Thompson Avice set that they had there, and the kit with like the starter materials, getting that for Christmas one year. And so then I was just kind of gung-ho. We had a few books that were like coffee table books up at the cabin, and one of them was Deke Meyer's Advanced Fly Fishing for Steelhead. I remember going through it. Has a few like classic flies in it. After reading through that, and then we had Jim Teeney's book, which the only fly that works is the teeny nymph, according to him, for everything.
Right. Absolutely.
So that was one of the first flies that I tied. I got trout up there consistently, things like that. We had dollies and such in there. I didn't get a steelhead until I was probably in my teens. And that was like gung-ho after that, pretty much.
Do you remember your first fish on a fly that you tied?
Weirdly, I don't. I remember the summer that it was, but I don't remember. The teeny nymph isn't necessarily difficult to tie, even for someone who's starting out.
Yeah.
It's, wrapping pheasant pretty much more than anything. And so I know that I had enough of them at the time that I probably couldn't decipher which were mine versus not. One fish luckily was big enough, dumb enough to kind of take it. So
right on. That's awesome. So you tied, you started self-tying, you were self-taught. Tell me how you went from that teenager tying her own flies, Jim Teeney nymphs and other things, to starting to do this more for a living. Like, how was that journey?
Yeah, so I lived in Anchorage, Sun Valley before that in Idaho. And then when I moved back down to Washington, I worked again in the vet industry. And then following that, I'd always been going into avid angler from the time I was younger. It used to be archer and angler, and then it became the avid angler on Lake City Way. And then it moved over to the one that was in Lake Forest Park that Ryan Smith now owns. I'd always been going in there. And at one point I was like, I need a break from the vet industry. I need a break from bartending, which I had been doing at night. And I just decided, screw it, like, why not apply in there? So I did and got that job. I ended up taking the place at the time of Dylan Rose, who works for Flywater Travel, a great guy. So I took his position and worked there from about 2004 on through 2006, just before 2016. Yeah.
So were you guiding and tying and working the shop?
Initially not guiding, no. Okay. But then eventually turned into guiding and hosting travel, things like that. I was just worked in the shop full time. There's only two of us initially that were really full time in there. Stephen Jackson, who's Alec Jackson's son. Okay. And myself, and then manager was part owner, also Nathan Keene. Okay. Nathan used to be he used to run the fly fishing school in the Cape in Massachusetts, the Orvis School. And so he was the one who originally brought back the flatwing pattern and recipe with him to the Northwest. And he used to teach classes, as did Dylan, who learned from him as well, at Avid Angler on how to tie flatwings adjusted for sea run cutthroat and such. And so that's where that all went downhill with me too.
I love that. So you're at Avid, you're taking a break from the vet industry. but then what happens?
I think probably social media kind of started blowing up. It was surprisingly about the same time frame that I don't think I liked my first husband following 5 or so years into the marriage. So it was good timing. I spent a lot of time tying flies instead of discussing or talking with him. And so that went on for about 5 more years, surprisingly, but I got really good at tying flies instead of talking to him. I realized that if I was going to leave eventually, that I needed to be able to still maintain clients, guiding, and make a living. And so I started posting a fly a day on Instagram. And with hopes that it would help the guiding business, and it did significantly. My initial intent was to just post a fly and not myself, with the intention that it would be perceived as just somebody who's an angler and a tyer, as opposed to a female who's in the fly fishing industry or fly fishing. Because I feel like at the time, specifically, that was, you would be perceived a little bit different.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Can we talk a minute about your article in Southern Culture on the Fly?
Yeah, of course.
I am not arm caddy and waiters. Excellent title.
Thank you.
Looking at back then at 2016 and then looking now, do you feel that the industry has changed in terms of how women are objectified, et cetera, et cetera? And do you have any advice that you might lend other women who are either want to get into the industry or are in the industry and maybe on the struggle list?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Initially in, 2016-ish, 2015-ish, it was so different with Instagram being new and whatnot that I felt it was me proving myself as a guide and an angler, because it was perceived competition with the people that were just standing in swimsuits with fly rods to get more attention to their Instagram pages. It wasn't necessarily what we have now, which is, it went from the original to, I felt like people were starting to give more credit where it was due with anglers of all, women, whatnot. And then it turned into something that's very different now, where you've got OnlyFans that are also promoting fly fishing. And so it's kind of back a little bit, again, a few steps backwards, unfortunately. But that said, it kind of goes along with that question towards the end that I was gonna go into about, as far as be what you don't see, but yeah, just that I kind of keep doing what you're doing and hope that other people follow along to a degree.
Can you talk about maintaining authenticity and integrity and being on social media?
Yeah.
How does that work for you? How does it feel?
It's really tough. I mean, I guess I was a little bit older when Instagram kind of became big, right? I was in my 30s. It's tough because for the first few years I was on there, I didn't go many places without guys saying specifically that, well, Brita has this many followers because she's a female with a fly rod. And I'm not dumb enough to think that that's not partially true. You're going to get more followers as a female if you have a fly rod or a fishing pole of any sort in it, right? So that was kind of a big deterrent for me, was to not include any of that, which not everyone needs. I don't know if it's the right way, but it was the way it felt right to me, I didn't want to be judged that way. I just wanted to be looked at and judged against some of the best anglers and tyers out there. So it worked out good for me personally, internally, to kind of remove myself from competing that way. But I don't know, I'm kind of torn. I want people to think that they could do whatever they want and be who they want to be online and represent themselves however they want. It's tough because you don't want people getting into it, and younger people getting into the sport, to think that that's what they need to do when they see it consistently. And so it's just being the right role model and not posing where it doesn't need to be done is kind of my rule, I guess.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's very well said. So you applied to RIO. Is that right? You applied to.
Kind of, yes.
Tell me how that came about.
It was sort of perfect timing because I had just separated not like 6 months prior from my ex-husband. You can totally remove that.
No, we're not going to, because one of the first interactions I ever had with you, and I don't think I'd ever even met you yet. I was on Facebook back and forth with a buddy and saying that I was just getting a divorce, and she was trying to comfort me, and you were in the conversation too, and you're like, no, I married Satan. And I see that much better. I was like, oh, thank you.
It is funny. Like some of the people I've known for years are like, I don't know his name. I just know it's Satan.
Exactly.
Like that's.
Anyway.
And I must say, he's in my phone with a picture of Voldemort, so it could be where it is. Yep.
I love it.
Anyways.
Yes. I digress. Go ahead.
So back to then, it worked out good because our VP of sales at the time had been following me online, and he had an idea about starting a fly program with Farbank. I had always had a kind of a resume on hold there at Farbank, and just thinking, well, I got nothing to lose at this point, and I kind of want to put a waterway between myself and everyone else.
Yeah.
So I moved across the water and ended up interviewing and getting the job. What they did was they put me in as tech support for technical line questions and rod and reel and line, whatever else questions, which thank God they're as nice as they were here, because I tended to have the same responses I did at the fly shop, which people knew was very blunt and very not necessarily PC in some situations as far as the response. I mean, we get a lot of people who would say, like, my rod broke when I cast it. I'm like, no, rods don't break when you cast them, flat out. Like, you hit it with something, you did something. That just doesn't happen. And people didn't like to hear that. But anyway, so they moved me along from there very quickly and realized that at the time they had Patrick Kilby running the repair department. And he used to be one of the managers at Idlewild, which was one of the most reputable fly companies out there in the past, and kind of dissolved in 2013. So they realized, okay, well, we brought Brita on, we have Patrick, so now we're going to go ahead and try and start this. And I had had flies already as a signature tire with another company, so I had to get out of that contract. And then I ended up, the two of us started the RIO Flies program from the ground up.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. And your role today, you're a designer and a tire. What is your official title?
It's technically product developer, and I essentially run the signature tire portion of it that we've started. We went for a long time without them. And so when you're with a fly company, there's kind of core patterns, which are like the Adams, the Royal Wolf, the Renegades. And then there's the signature patterns, which are everything else. Generally speaking, we went through and pulled all of the core patterns that were free, essentially, to take. And then we had to go into the signature pattern stuff that was stuff that, if it's like the Kaufman stone, yes, we know it's Randall Kaufman. Yes, we know Aqua is still paying Kaufman for it. But every other fly company is already doing this, so we think that we could take this. We didn't want to take any that were even remotely controversial, because we didn't want to be that person.
Yeah.
In that company, there's a few of them that we wanted really bad and we didn't take. And so instead we were like, well, we can make it better. Let's improve on this fly. And then we could come out with our own. And if it's truly improved the fly, then we feel better about ourselves. Right. So that's how we kind of approached that. And now we've gotten to the point of where we have pretty much all the core patterns that we wanted. Now we're left with just needing really legit stuff in the more nuanced areas and smaller categories.
So what advice would you give to someone who really wants to get into fly tying?
The thing that I used to tell everybody in the fly shop is, you see, everyone who gets into fly tying, they have so many flies that they love fishing. They just want to get everything out there, buy all the materials and try it all. And in reality, fly tying is really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that works for streamers and technically wet flies, nymphs, things like that, does not transfer over, obviously, to dry flies. So you're never gonna you're gonna have to buy everything. Best thing you could do is choose which one you either love to fish the most and want to go that route, or think of what you want to tie the most, or don't like buying the most, and stick with either the wet or the dry flies side initially, and just buy materials for those. Eventually you'll start accumulating everything and then can broaden your scope of where you're buying for and tying for. But it's overwhelming initially what you need to buy.
Yeah.
So it's nice when you have hooks that work for a lot of different things, like all dry fly hooks. Then you could start interchanging them and changing it up and going kind of little experimenting, things like that.
Speaking of tools and things, again, for the beginner, the person that's thinking about getting into it, what would be a good beginner advice and beginner tools?
If you really think you're going to get into it, the vise is a hard one not to just get a nicer one out of the gate. Vices you'll struggle with big time if you don't have something that holds it nicely. I personally use HMH. They've always been really good to me, and those vices, they're not really gadgety. They don't have a lot of bells and whistles, but they're solid and they last forever and they just work everywhere for everything. So that's kind of what I've used. There's a lot of different ones that you can buy in a shop, like the Griffin vices, the 2A, whatnot. Those guys are like in the under $100. So that would be a great one. Tools wise, the thing that you don't want to do, 90% of the tools you may not use that are in those kits, especially. So if you're buying it as a gift for someone, get them the kit. If you're buying it for yourself, buy a nice pair of scissors, like Dr. Slick or something, or Loon, and then buy a nice bobbin and any whip finisher you could find and call it a day for now.
Nice. What's your favorite bobbin?
Oh, CNF.
Yeah? How come?
I love the weight of it. I love the feel of it. I love that it has the foam in it, which I have love-hate with the foam, because if I don't remember the bobbin threader, then I'm screwed, because you can't suck it through that one. But it's freaking awesome. Nice. And it doesn't spin the threads, so you end up with like flat floss when you're using floss, things like that. It's pretty awesome.
Right on. Can you walk us through the process for creating the flies that you feature in your Match the Hatch posts, please? And a second thing to that is, how do you ensure that they mimic nature accurately? Like, what's your
my thing with the matching bait fish and matching insects and such is that most people, when they go about tying a fly, they see something to reference, whether it be another fly pattern that gets them excited to try it, or they see a cricket, for example, and they look online. The next thing they do is cricket flies. And so what ends up happening is they end up taking from flies that already exist that to match. And it ends up getting further away from the real thing a lot of times. So what I try and do is only look at the natural movement and natural item itself. So I'll watch a lot of nature videos. I watch a lot of YouTube videos of crayfish swimming in water and really nerdy stuff. I look at that, and that's what I start with, so that I know I'm going it based off of just that. And what ends up happening is sometimes I end up with these really weird things that are not, I'm using materials that other people haven't tried using for that before, because I'm actually looking at it at the actual natural item itself instead of another fly pattern, which would kind of pigeonhole me into thinking, oh, I need foam for that because everyone else uses foam for that, right?
How do you make sure that they move accurately? Movement.
I can watch a lot of videos.
Yeah.
Like our YouTube at home is like jujitsu, thanks Justin, and bugs swimming in the water, thanks to me. So it's the most random combination you'll ever see. I nerd out on that stuff.
I love that. Then I guess I assume you test them both. Maybe
I do.
You test them in a tank, and
we test them in a swim tank. I'll test them in this big above ground pool that I put up sometimes in the summer. And then obviously out in the sound, which is closest for me to be able to throw a fly in.
What are some of your favorite fisheries or species to target, and why are they so meaningful to you?
Obviously Puget Sound. Steelhead is going to be one of my first favorites, Washington steelhead in particular. I've sort of removed myself a little bit from loving it as much and kind of put up a little bit of a wall just because how steelheading in general, the steelhead are so few and far between. I feel
Same.
bad targeting them.
Yeah.
I stopped guiding them, all that.
Yeah.
So sea run cutthroat and salmon in the salt are that's one of my favorites, followed very quickly by triggers. Anywhere there's triggerfish, those are my favorite. I love hunting them. I love stalking them. I love finding them. I love watching them, everything. Florida fishing is definitely my favorite. I love everything you can find in Florida, from the ditches to, there's cichlids and weird stuff there, to the East Coast where you're getting like crazy awesome bone fishing and things like that, to snook on the West Coast. I just love it. There's no question that I'll be there, living there someday.
Outstanding. Are you more of a saltwater girl?
I didn't want to be.
Nothing wrong with it. I'm just curious.
When I lived in Sun Valley, obviously I love being able to go right, before and after work and fish the rivers, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there is the pull of the saltwater fish is kind of unlike, anything else that it's, and just knowing that you could treat it the same way, walking a beach is no different than walking a river. There's a little more water to choose from, and you're having to, work a little bit harder in some areas because you can't get to all those fish. But I do love saltwater.
Right on. I love that. If you had to pick your top 5 flies that you feel everyone should have in their box, and that can be salt or fresh, what would you choose?
Pink worm of some sort, because everything eats a pink worm.
Okay.
So squirmy probably, unfortunately, would be one of them. I'll just target it for freshwater right now. So it'd be a worm of some sort. Flashback pheasant tail in a size 16 would be another one. A bugger, woolly bugger, chubby Chernobyl, and an Adams in a size 16.
Nice.
That would be it, for sure. You could fish every single trout stream in the U.S., probably the world, with those 5.
Asking for a friend. What's your favorite triggerfish fly? It's me, I'm your friend.
the cheeseburger crab that
really?
Jeff Fesco did for us. I wanted to hate that fly because it has the tail on it.
Yep.
And I thought those tails were bullshit. When I went to Christmas Island the first time, I got triggerfish on like squid, or not squid, but shrimp flies, things like that. Mm-hmm. And then when I went back the second time, I had some of the cheeseburger flies with me, and I threw that thing, and those fish ran for it. It wasn't even like a eating as much as it was like a predatory eat and attack. They went ballistic. I have never seen triggerfish, like, you're worried about spooking them, all that, but I had never experienced them charging at your fly. It was pretty cool. They are a heavier fly, so it does do better in like Christmas Island on an incoming tide in particular. Yeah. It would work well in places like Hawaii, where it's deeper water and everything eats crabs and things like that. That would be a really good place for it too, but I haven't tried it there.
All right, so let's switch a little bit, just talk about some like allyship and support. How can people best support you and other women specifically in the fly fishing industry?
I would say join with groups, meetups, things like that. I feel like some of the United Women on the Fly, for example, just joining other women and doing things together, fishing, activism in different areas, things like that is probably my choice way that I would suggest people to do that. For me in particular, just enjoy what I have to offer and not bitch about it. I think just supporting other women by not criticizing and liking what they have to offer. And if you don't, then just move on, call it a day.
Yeah, perfect. Do you have any advice that you would give to women who aspire to become professional fly tyers or designers? Is there anything you could offer them?
Yeah, just kind of put your head down and just work on your tying skills. don't try and compare yourself against anybody else, because it's, unfortunately, I mean, there's, as far as like the professional level of fly tying, there's very few females in it in general.
Right.
And it's easy to get down that way. And in reality, you just need to get better as a tyer. And so start thinking outside the box, trying different things. And that's kind of the best I can really.
Are there any organizations, groups professionally that you either want to highlight or are passionate about supporting or feel they're doing a good job that you want to give a shout out to in this industry?
You know, one in particular that I'm a big fan of is Bonefish Tarpon Trust.
Yeah, nice.
That's a big one for me. Jillian Tisdale is big in that, and I'm a big supporter of them, her, and what she's doing with that. Justin grew up in Crystal River, and so that waterway and protecting all the Gulf water and just Florida glades, all of it is really important to me because I'm a big tarpon fan as well.
Nice. Very good. Very good. Our campaign, is called Be What You Don't See. What does that phrase mean to you personally?
I was trying to think of this, and really the first thing that I can think of is just not to think of anyone else and be yourself first and foremost in all areas, what you feel and you believe in, and then others will then look to you as hopefully a role model and doing the same.
Nice. You personally, who maybe would you like to see more of, like, on the river?
Ooh, who? Heather. I love Heather. Heather's great. Can we just say Heather?
Sure. Perfect answer.
I don't get to see Heather enough. Yeah, anyone who enjoys fishing and doesn't give a shit about catching necessarily and can make fun of the crappiest day ever is what I want to fish with and be with on the water. Luckily, Heather is a lot of that, so that's part of why that comes in. Yeah, that's kind of my favorite. Lacey Kelly's another really good one with that too, and that you could have the worst weather, worst day, and we were like, screw it, it's torrential downpour one day, like torrential, and we grabbed gear rods that she had, and we went out to one of the rivers, like in one of the, I don't know, it's in around the Homosassa River, and just shit for baby tarpon and whatever it would eat, and it worked out fine too. Like. Yeah. You just got to make the best out of it and enjoy yourself and not care what you look like and go for it.
Perfect. I love that. So what's next for you? Do you have any dream collaborations or future projects that you want us to keep an eye out for?
Not really. Because we've been blowing up here with signature tires, things like that. That has been a big focus for me and work. As far as beyond that, there isn't much, but I would love to go anywhere and fish everywhere. Whoever wants to pay me to do it.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. I love that. All right. Well, those are all the questions that we had. Is there anything else that you want to add? I just want to thank you again for taking the time and talking to us and letting us have you as part of this campaign.
Of course.
And again, I'm a massive fan, and I love looking at the stuff that you tie. So thank you for posting it so often.
Yeah, of course.
Being a rad human being.